Okay, so there's this murderer. It says, and the title is "The Walls Have Ears." And it says she woke up with a start. What woke her? She wasn't having a bad dream. Did she? Did she hear something? There, there. What was that? It sounded like knocking. Where is it coming from? And it's not close. It's not from the front door. It sounds too close. Wait, it's coming from inside the wall. Daniel Laplante was born in 1970 in Townsend, Massachusetts. It is a, it is a small town that only an hour away from Boston. It was founded in 1676 and is is proud of its long history. But not all was quaint and safe in this picturesque town. Just like any other place, it had a dark side. One of those, one of those, one of those that lived and thrived in the dark space was Daniel LaPlante. For most of his early life, he suffered physical, emotional, and sexual abuse from his own father. On top of his torture at home, he was bullied at school by his classmates. In order, in order to have sense of control over his chaotic and traumatic life, turned Daniel turned to petty theft. He was only 15. Most nights he would scout around town and break into homes. He started out by stealing small valuables, things that wouldn't be missed or immediately noticed. But he soon grew bored and needed some more excitement. He grew bolder and discovered that he enjoyed playing with his victims. At one house he would steal a few items, the next house he would simply move things around or rearrange furniture, and at others he would steal things and then replace them with random items he bought himself. It was a game and he won every time, but one house and one family piqued his interest to a frightening level. In 1986, the Andrews family had just lost their wife and mother, Deborah, to cancer. Frank Andrews was struggling with the loss of his wife and partner. He suddenly be he was suddenly a single father, and he needed to be strong for his two teenage daughters, Annie and Jessica. Annie and Jessica were just a couple of years apart. They weren't just sisters, they were best friends. Frank worked long hours as a bus driver, mostly nights. This left Annie and Jessica on their own. They were good girls and followed the rules. They were responsible and looked out for each other. Not long after moving into their new house, 15-year-old Annie met a boy. One evening while the girls were home alone doing homework, the phone rang. On the other side, on the other line was a boy named Danny, and he asked to speak to Annie. Danny had gotten Annie's phone number from a mutual friend. One night, Danny finally asked Annie out on a date, a real date. He wanted to take her out for ice cream shop and then the movies. Take her to ice cream shop, then the movies. The doorbell rang. Annie ran down the stairs with butterflies in her belly. But when she opened the door, she gasped with surprise. The boy out at the door could not be Annie. This wasn't the self-described attractive athlete. The boy at the door was short, messy, and had acne all over his face. The boy at the door was a liar. Annie was a sweet girl and had committed to date Danny, so she went with him to the ice cream shop. But her butterflies had completely vanished. The date was uncomfortable and awkward. The easy, flirtatious banter of their telephone conversations was nowhere to be found. At some point during the at At some point during the sparse conversation of the death of Annie's mother came up. While the topic was still hard, Annie really needed to confide in someone about the struggle and hoping Danny could be a shoulder to lean on. She might not be attracted to Danny like she had hoped, but she could really use a friend. Instead of Danny being supportive and sensitive, Danny perked up and began asking questions about the details of Annie's mother's death. Disturbed, Annie shut down the conversation and told Danny that she needed to head home. She walked away hoping to see the last of Danny, but her wish would be ignored. Danny wasn't ready to say goodbye after a few nights of disastrous date. Annie and Jessica were particularly missing their mother. They decided to have an Importo seance. If they could just hear their mother's voice or feel the presence, maybe the emptiness would go away. Then they went downstairs to the basement and set everything up: candles, crystals, and pictures of their mother. Pictures of there. They chanted and prayed, asking their mother to appear, to speak to them, show a sign that she was there, anything, but nothing happened. Disappointed and missing their mom more than ever, they decided to go back upstairs, but not before their father came down and caught them. He made the girls promise not to do anything foolish again. Their mom was gone, and nothing would bring her back. A few nights later, while the father was at work, the girls were doing their homework while watching TV. All of a sudden, they heard knocking, but it wasn't from the front door, it was from the back door. Where is it coming from? They listened and waited. Knock, knock, knock. It seemed to be coming from the house itself. It had to be their mom's. The seance worked. The knocking stopped after a while. The girls went to bed with a smile on their faces. Their mom was close by. The knocking continued for several nights. Annie and Jessica hadn't mentioned anything to their father. He didn't believe in such nonsense, and he wanted them to start moving on and dealing with their mother's death. Like clockwork, the knocking happened every night as the girls tucked themselves into bed. But one night, the knocking was different. It was more of a pounding, an instant, disruptive pounding that wouldn't end. It happened all night until their father came home. The girls were terrified. It had been so loud in the deafening quiet of the night. That wasn't their mother. That was something else, something sinister. Did they bring back an evil spirit? Did they invite it into their home? The pounding continued for a few more nights, and it came from all over the house. In the dark of the night, the pounding and banging was terrifying and wouldn't stop. The girls finally confessed to their father about the seance. They told him about the knocking and how at first they believed it was their mother. He didn't believe them. He thought they wanted attention. He emphatically or whatever, told Annie and Jessica there was no such thing as a ghost or seance, and their mother was never coming back. Frank never heard of the banging, so he refused to believe the girls. He told them it was just old house settling. The banging continued at all hours of the day and night, but only when Frank was at work. Now other strange things were happening: banging on the pipes, doors being slammed, lights turning on, and off, items being moved around and found in odd places. Fed up, the girls went through the house to investigate. While they were in the basement, they came across a terrifying scene. Scribbled on their wall in red writing, "I'm in your room, come find me." They ran upstairs and called their father. Their father rushed home, and upon the message, he called the police. When the police investigated, they couldn't find anyone in the house. They found the words on the wall were written in ketchup. Frank believed his daughters pulled a prank for attention. He scolded and grounded them. A few weeks went by, and nothing but quiet. No banging, no creepy messages. The girls were wondering if the evil spirit had finally left. Till one night, while they were watching a movie, the knocking started again. Frank was at work, and Annie and Jessica were alone. The girls went upstairs where the knocking was coming from, only to find another message, "I'm back, find me." They ran out of the house to their neighbors. Frank arrived home from work, and his crying terrified girls. Enough was enough. Frank left his girls with the neighbors and went into the house. Believing it was another prank by his daughters, Frank was startled up behind to stumble upon a man at the top of the stairs. The man was dressed in Frank's wife's wedding dress and wearing a blonde wig. He had camouflage paint on his face. He was wielding a hatchet. Frank ran out of his house immediately and called the police. He finally believed his daughters. The police searched up through the house, but came up with nothing. They found multiple messages written on the walls throughout the house, including another one that said, "Marry me." Finally, one officer noticed a hidden door behind a bookshelf. Once opened, they found not a man, but a teenage boy. It was Danny LaPlante. For months, Danny had been living inside the walls of Andrew's house. Danny was arrested and charged with armed assault, breaking and entering, and armed burglary. He was sent to a juvenile facility for 1 year. Frank and his daughters, Annie and Jessica, immediately moved out of their house. But the story of Danny LaPlante was just getting started, and only would get more gruesome. In October of 1987, it was determined that Danny would be charged on an adult for crimes against the Andrews family. He was transferred from juvenile facility to jail. His mother posted his bond. From there, he went to stay with his mother and stepfather. Releasing Danny LaPlante would turn into an awful mistake. Almost immediately, Danny was back to his old tricks. He was breaking into houses again, but the house particular would prove to be the peak of Danny's criminal history. Andrew and Priscilla Gustafson were a young couple with 2 kids. They were soon expecting their third. On December 1st, 1987, Andrew, an attorney, left for work as usual. 8-year-old Abigail hopped on the bus and headed for school. Priscilla, a 33-year-old preschool teacher, took her 5-year-old son William to run a few errands. The neighbors recall seeing Priscilla arrive at their home a few hours and hustled her youngest inside. Shortly after, Abigail returned home from school. That was the last time that anyone would see any of them alive. When Andrew returned home from work that evening, he found his entire family in entire family, his whole world, dead. The small town of Towson, Massachusetts, was in complete shock. Crime happens in every town, but the brutality of these murders was beyond. Now, like for part 2 to see what happens next.